You could raster this onto wood, and the dark areas would etch, the light areas would not, right? And so that would be a way to preserve it. If you wanted this to be definitely blue and have the light kind of come through, you could take a piece of plywood or whatever wood you have and just lightly stain the surface. It can't be too saturated because it will soak into the grain, and you want to be able to just kind of break the surface of the paint to reveal the wood beneath. So it would take a little bit of experimenting in terms of the power settings and whatever else, but effectively what you could do with this is convert it to a black and white, invert the image, and then that would be able to be rastered.
All right.
So the first thing to do is if you, so I don't know, people do things a lot of different ways. I like to go to hue and saturation, and you can hit Command U for that. And I like to just take saturation and just bring it all the way down to negative. Like that. It effectively gives you a black and white image.
Okay.
But because you're still in RGB instead of grayscale, you kind of have a little bit more control over things. So that tends to be what I do. That's my preference over there. So if you just hit OK.
And so just to turn this into algorithm terms, because I'm still in RGB, there's still codes, a more diverse array of codes in each tiny pixel stored. Like if I were able, I would not be able to see, I've learned the pixel array for this because it's too huge.
Yeah.
It's compressed, but each of the tiny squares, it's likely that it has a larger range of color codes than the grayscale would bring it down to. I could find out how many. That could be kind of interesting to think about. Okay.
Yeah.
So you like to keep it where it's still in RGB.
Yeah, it's just a preference that I have. You never know what you might want to do with the image, and so like if you did, this wasn't going to etch and you wanted to print it or a different way, you could tint this a different hue. You could, there's lots of different things you could do with it. If it goes to grayscale, then you kind of tint it. And you can always convert it from grayscale back to RGB, but I don't know. For me, I just like to do it this way.
Okay.
It's like just a personal preference. So then, right now this is too low contrast, meaning there's not enough value shift between the light areas and the dark areas. So we want to bump up the contrast. To do that, I like to use levels. And so if you just do Command L, you can get levels. And this shows you the histogram of where the concentration of tones are. Right. So first off, if you take the left little marker there and just drag it to the right, you should see things starting to get darker. Right. And then if you do the same thing on the light side and bring it more towards the middle, you'll see the highlights start to brighten up. So I like this because it gives you a visual representation of how you can see it. If those little triangles are too close together, then you have far fewer grays in there, which that could be good or not, depending on the look that you want for this.
Because the grays are ultimately just going to be cutting less deep. Yeah.
Yep. And so, to me, this actually looks pretty good. Obviously, on the outside of the image, it's darker. The inside here, it's lighter. So there's some things that we could do to work with that kind of next. But I would say that's good. The other thing is that if you click on this little button there, that's maybe just how it was photographed or how the density of the image was. Or if you click on this little button here, that's the history.
Let me cancel this.
You can always go back in the history. Yeah.
That's what you were going to do on your car. You looked at the history of your steps?
To see if
That's so handy.
Yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't, I think you can set it to do like infinite recording of the history, but the default is like maybe 50 steps or something like that.
It'd be really helpful for me when I'm like clicking, panic clicking, and like don't have any recollection of what I did. Okay.
So now if we wanted this to be, this is going to be really clean on the left here. It's going to be a bit more muddled and lighter etched in the middle. So there's a few things you could do. One would be you could use the burn tool. So this little thing that looks like a magnifying glass that's filled in, click and hold it down. The dodge tool will make things lighter. If you click and hold down the menu, there's also the burn tool. This comes from dark photography.
Oh. Okay.
If you're dodging, you're putting something in front of the light so it gets less exposed. If you're burning, you could actually like cut a hole in a piece of cardboard and like add more light to an area. And so it's kind of so right now it wants to burn the midtones, so I would change that to shadows. and then the exposure is 50%. It might be a little high. I usually tend to start with like 25 and then work my way up if I need to, so it doesn't go too high. But and you can change the brush size if you want to make it a little bit bigger. It's probably good. And I would just start to paint down here and see how it looks to get it darker.
So I'm just holding and dragging.
Mm-hmm. It's darkening a little bit. You could probably bump up, I guess, to like 50 or maybe even 60%. Might be a bit more noticeable. Yeah, you can definitely see in the middle how that's getting darker now. So it's not affecting the lights, it's only affecting the darks. So there must be an algorithm there too, right? That lets it know which pixels to adjust and which ones not to. So we can try that if you want. So if you do Command L again, you can know the levels, and then just take the black and move it maybe to the middle. And we should see this get darker down there.
Oh, did I do it wrong? I did this.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I thought I...
Yeah. No, drag that one over.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you click on and off the preview button, you might be able to see it down here. There's a little bit darker difference.
Yeah.
So you could probably go over even further. You want this to be pretty black. That looks pretty good. So just hit OK.
Yeah.
So now, let's say that this is too dark up here.
Mm-hmm.
What you could do is go to the history. It might be hard to see with this, but if there's a little box next to the one above it, not that one, but the one above it. Okay, so that's going to paint the history before you did that function. If you click the history brush right here.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
Just a particular part.
Yeah, so it's super helpful because, you
might have applied something to the whole.
See how I want it to be controlled and have it go back and forth that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ultimately, this looks like it's pretty black and white, so it's probably going to print pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if we were going to take this and shift it, take away material and leave the paint, we'd want to invert the image.
Right. Okay. So let's do that.
So you can do image invert, or you could do Command I.
Just that. Oh, it just did it.
Yep. So
that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's just taking all the white pixels and turning them black, and vice versa. And it does it with color too, right? So if you had a color image, it would.
Does it take? So there's a very, very black, and there's a totally white, and so it switches those, and then there's an almost all the way black and an almost all the way white. It reverses those, so that all of the contour or whatever.
So like if you had something that was very close in gray, and you inverted it, you wouldn't see much of it.
Yeah.
But in this high contrast scenario, you really see it a lot.
So then all of these are algorithmic functions, because all of this is working with pixels, as opposed to what the names come from for some of the tools, applying something in a dark room,
right.
or something else even.
Exactly.